A nation is never born fully formed. It grows, stumbles, experiments, and learns, guided, for better or worse, by the people brave enough, ambitious enough, or desperate enough to sit at its helm. Imagine lining up the first 20 presidents of the United States in a single room. You'd see revolutionaries scarred by war, introverts terrified of crowds, idealists clinging to fragile visions, and power brokers whose decisions still ripple across modern life. Some names shine like legends. Others quietly collect dust. But together they form a story far stranger, more dramatic, and more human than the polished portraits hanging in museums. It all begins with a man who never wanted the job. George Washington stepped into the presidency with the wary eyes of someone who had seen republics collapse before. He knew every decision set a precedent, every gesture mattered. When he walked into New York for his inauguration, crowds cheered. But Washington felt the weight of a nation perched on a knife's edge. His cabinet argued violently, foreign powers circled like wolves, and rebellions simmered in the countryside. Yet, through caution, restraint, and a talent for stepping away from power, he turned a fragile experiment into something real. When he refused a third term, the world gasped. Leaders simply did not give up power voluntarily. Washington did, and in doing so, he built the model for every president that followed. John Adams, the brilliant but prickly statesman, inherited the chair next. Adams was a thinker more than a politician, and his presidency proved it. He faced a humiliating quasi-war with France and a wave of political hysteria at home. The infamous Alien and Sedition Acts, laws that jailed critics of the government, remain one of the darkest stains on early American freedom. Yet Adams's most courageous act was one few applauded at the time. He kept the young nation out of a war with France that could have shattered it. He sacrificed popularity for stability, and he knew it would cost him the next election. It did. Then came Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, a man who wrote about liberty while owning more than 600 enslaved people. Jefferson embodied contradictions that still define America. His presidency is remembered for the Louisiana Purchase, a deal so enormous and so constitutionally questionable that even he doubted its legality. Overnight, he doubled the size of the United States. It was a gamble, but a successful one. And somewhere in the background, two men, Lewis and Clark, prepared for a legendary journey into what Jefferson once called the Great Unknown. James Madison, Jefferson's close ally, stepped into office as the nation drifted toward war. Small, soft-spoken, and nicknamed Little Jemmy, Madison seemed an unlikely wartime president. Yet during the War of 1812, he watched British troops burn Washington to the ground, including the White House itself. As flames lit the sky, many believed the American experiment had finally failed. But Madison held the line. Peace came, and with it, a renewed sense of national identity. James Monroe followed with the era of good feelings, though despite the name, it wasn't quite as tranquil as advertised. Monroe issued a warning to European empires. The Western Hemisphere was no longer open for colonization. The Monroe Doctrine would shape American foreign policy for centuries, even though few at the time realized its significance. John Quincy Adams, Monroe's Secretary of State and the son of a president, took office next. Brilliant, principled, and socially awkward, Adams was so uninterested in political games that he refused to replace even one government official with a supporter. His presidency struggled, but his post-presidency career became legendary. He returned to Congress and became an unstoppable force against slavery. In many ways, he found his true voice only after leaving the highest office in the land. Then came Andrew Jackson, a man so fiery his duels could fill a season of television drama. Jackson shaped the presidency into a seat of immense personal power. To some, he championed the common man. To others, he unleashed chaos, his dismantling of the National Bank, his spoils system, and most tragically, the forced removal of Native American tribes, leading to the Trail of Tears, cast a long shadow across the nation. Jackson remains one of the most controversial figures in American history, a man whose legacy is tangled in both democratic expansion and profound injustice. Martin Van Buren inherited Jackson's volatile economic decisions and immediately faced the panic of 1837, a devastating financial collapse. A master political organizer, Van Buren suddenly found himself powerless against a crisis he never created. His calm demeanor couldn't save him from public fury. William Henry Harrison followed briefly. His presidency lasted only 31 days before pneumonia claimed him. The first president to die in office, Harrison triggered a constitutional crisis. Who becomes president when the president dies? His successor, John Tyler, answered the question by simply declaring, "I am the president." And with that, a precedent was born. Tyler's own presidency was turbulent. His entire cabinet resigned, and his party expelled him. Yet he stood firm on the idea that presidential succession was absolute, a principle that would later save the nation multiple times. James K. Polk, one of the most effective presidents you rarely hear about, burst onto the scene with a clear list of goals and accomplished every one of them in 4 years. Under Polk, the U.S. expanded dramatically, acquiring vast swaths of land, including California, New Mexico, and much of the American Southwest. But the war that produced this expansion was bloody, controversial, and deeply divisive, laying groundwork for future conflict. Zachary Taylor, a war hero who barely cared for politics, arrived next. He opposed the expansion of slavery into new territories, creating fierce enemies in Congress. His sudden death, after barely a year in office, shifted the balance of power at a crucial moment. Millard Fillmore stepped in and supported the Compromise of 1850, a desperate attempt to preserve the Union. One of its components, the Fugitive Slave Act, forced citizens to aid in the capture of escaped enslaved people. This turned the North against him and pushed the nation closer to confrontation. Franklin Pierce then watched the country fracture further. His presidency accelerated the slide into chaos through decisions like the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which opened the door to violent clashes over slavery. Kansas erupted into bloodshed, and the nation's divisions became impossible to ignore. James Buchanan followed with paralysis. Faced with a country tearing itself apart, he chose inaction. He believed the Constitution gave him no power to stop states from seceding. History has not judged him kindly. And then came Abraham Lincoln, a self-educated lawyer from Illinois. Lincoln entered office with the country already split. His presidency became a test of the nation's soul. Through war, sorrow, and immense personal burden, he preserved the Union and redefined the meaning of freedom. The Emancipation Proclamation, Gettysburg Address, and his vision for reconciliation transformed the nation forever. His assassination in 1865 left America grieving and unfinished. Andrew Johnson attempted to lead the fractured nation after Lincoln's death, but his lenient approach to the former Confederate states infuriated Congress. His battles with lawmakers led to his impeachment, the first in American history. He narrowly avoided removal by a single vote. Ulysses S. Grant, the victorious Union general, took the presidency next. Determined to protect the rights of formerly enslaved people, he crushed violent groups like the Ku Klux Klan and pushed for civil rights enforcement. Yet, his administration was plagued by corruption scandals, not always of his own making, but often by those he trusted. Rutherford B. Hayes entered office through one of the most disputed elections in American history. His deal to secure the presidency ended Reconstruction, withdrawing federal troops from the South. This decision opened the door to nearly a century of segregation and oppression under Jim Crow laws, a turning point whose consequences echo far into the future. And finally, James A. Garfield, who served so briefly yet so remarkably. Garfield, a poor boy raised in a log cabin, rose to the presidency with a brilliant mind and a sweeping vision for civil service reform. But just months into his term, he was shot by a disgruntled office seeker. His long, painful death shocked the nation and galvanized a new demand for reform. Chester A. Arthur, his successor, surprised the country. A man once known for machine politics transformed into a champion of civil service reform, proving that even the most unlikely individuals can reshape history when given the chance. 20 presidents, 20 distinct voices, 20 chapters in the story of a nation struggling to define itself. Some led with wisdom, others with ambition, others with fear. Some left legacies etched in stone, others dissolved into obscurity. But each faced a country in constant transformation, growing, fracturing, rebuilding, and striving toward ideals it often failed to reach. Together, they built the foundation of the United States, not as a perfect union, but as an evolving one, a nation shaped by triumph, contradiction, tragedy, and the imperfect humans who dared to lead it.